Welcome, welcome. Can everybody hear us?
We're just doing a system check, making sure that we have good sound. And I'm checking on.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? It doesn't actually let us. Oh, I guess it's on.
Yeah.
That's a trip because it's not showing on this side.
Hey.
See?
Hey, Terry.
Oh, Terry's in here. Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janet, watching from North Carolina.
Yeah. Terry's in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Giving a few moments to get some people in.
Yeah, we are excited about you guys visiting with our guest and being able to ask any gardening questions.
Yes.
Because this guy, he's really, really smart. We got to meet him back in, what was it, June? Or no?
No, it was earlier this year. Him and his wife at the Okie homestead.
Yeah.
Up there in Oklahoma. And they do a lot of stuff with Nathan and Jill with Whispering Willows Farm and whatnot.
Well, we actually were aware of his wife before because I really like her elderberry syrup.
Yes, we purchased the elderberry syrup from there and some other products that they have.
Yeah.
This guy is Sean and his wife. They have a vast knowledge of gardening, marketing, and stuff like that for not just for the homesteaders, but also for the gardening aspect. And we've put out a while back of see what y'all would like to know because we only do these lives once a month, the first Saturday of each month. And we felt like it would be a lot more interesting to be more of a educational base. And what better than Sean, who's very educational and has a teaching mindset to promote and help people, especially first-time gardeners and people that want to be more efficient on gardening and homesteading. So we're going to bring him on here and have him introduce himself and talk a little bit about him and also open up some questions for that y'all may have.
Remember, we need questions in caps.
Yeah.
If you have a question, put it in caps because in slight intermissions, we're going to look for questions for him and make sure they get answered.
All right, Sean, what is going on, buddy?
Hey, y'all, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
Good, doing good. It's good to see y'all again.
You too.
You too.
So, Sean, kind of tell everybody a little bit about your background. How did you get started into this? Well, introduce yourself and the name of your business and everything, and how you got started into this.
Yeah, I always have to summarize it for time. All right, it's been a journey. So my name is Sean Passera. I own Mindful Farmer, and that business is now in its second year. Launched it during, I figured a global pandemic and material shortage and labor shortage was a good time to start a business. So I launched that about a year ago. But before that, I actually did my undergrad and my master's in environmental science. And so I've always been interested in ecology and biology and being outdoors, and was doing environmental science for a while and felt like I was just kind of putting a Band-Aid over a lot of the impact that was happening as opposed to preventing it from being degraded in the first place. And so around the tail end of my master's, I got really interested in sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture and just went headlong into it. And we had this tiny little house and a tiny little backyard. And I filled that space with food and quail, and we were those people. Like the church we went to was on one side, my office at the college was on the other side of us, and so we were just a spectacle. But it was so fun, and like first year of marriage it was great. And then moved to Texas. We started a beekeeping business. I worked on farms with different people just to learn and grow my knowledge. And then 6 years ago, we moved to Arkansas to work with Heifer International and work with small farms across the state, doing some of the farm and like financial development for them. And that was definitely a godsend to get that opportunity, because it gave me the opportunity to basically see how 30 different small scale sustainable farms operate across the state, and be able to learn from each of them and learn things I like, things I don't like, things I want to apply, things I may not want to apply. And then from then I got to manage a farm for Heifer for 5 years, and we did wholesale organic vegetables. We did about 100,000 pounds of produce on 3 acres. So managed super intensively, high output, low input, low off farm input. And then, departed from there to start Mindful Farmer, because I just really noticed there was a lack, like a gap in the tools that were available to small scale farmers, like especially tunnels for small scale growers, and especially the small scale to like home gardener, and the homesteader is kind of in that scale. And there's just not a lot of specific tools geared towards that community. And so in my opinion, there were these big organizations that were looking for who's the next generation of farmer. And what I found is like a lot of the next generation of farmers are coming from the homestead community. Joel Salatin's a great example of that. Like how many homesteaders he's gotten growing meat regeneratively. And now they're like, well, now I just need to scale it. Now I'm feeding my community. So I'd like to provide that aspect on the produce side. How do we get more serious gardeners, homesteaders, part-time farmers farming organically and sustainably for full-time, living is the goal of Mindful Farmer.
Yeah. And we kind of got it on into as a foodie aspect of this whole thing. We went from urban backyard gardener now to
outgrowing our classroom.
To being a first generation homesteader and stuff like that. Yeah. And the thing awesome. I like about you is that you not just only focus on homesteading, but you also focus on gardeners, especially first-time gardeners, and how to be more efficiently.
That was our first passion.
Yeah. So can you talk about how, especially first-time gardeners, can be a little bit more efficient?
Some of the things that you find and just little things that can help you be more efficient.
Oh, for sure. That's so Jill Reagan, who I work with a lot, we're actually coming out with a course this winter that's going to tie in a lot of those things. So coming from like the professional commercial vegetable production, and then applying some of those techniques and tools to like the small scale farm, like I'm confident that with like the right tools and techniques, like any home gardener could probably double their output in half the amount of labor with just like putting the right systems in place. And so that's kind of like the promise that I want to make when I work with folks, especially if I do like consulting or something. So like right off the bat, I think like working with the soil is a big kind of paradigm shift for folks. I'm not really big on raised bed gardens. I don't really like raised bed gardens for a variety of reasons. But it kind of tends to operate like I need to bring in good soil instead of fixing kind of what you have. And so I'm kind of that, like grow in the ground, amend what you put in what you need. And the plants are just going to perform a lot better that way. The second thing is probably just getting a game plan ahead of the season. So like farmers obviously have to do that if you're farming at scale, but even for home gardeners to know how many cucumbers you're going to plant, how much you think that those cucumbers will yield. And then, which kind of is like the third point, like how often you need to plant them.
Yeah.
And so, succession planting is a big game changer for a lot of farmers, a lot of gardeners. Is, it seems like for beginning gardeners, it's April 15th, it's our last frost date, and you till the whole garden and you plant everything at once, and then you get everything at once, and then in August you're stressed because all the weeds are there, and then you're just kind of done for the season. And so what I found really helpful is just planting a little bit throughout the season. And especially where we're at, like in Arkansas and south to you guys, like, we can plant almost year round, especially with a tunnel. You can plant, we're planting lettuce like every single week of the year. And so it doesn't have to be such a big rush to production. You can like schedule out, and so we've had, between like our family and the Reagans, we planted like 6 cucumber plants, like 3 different times. And we've had bags of cucumbers all for the whole summer. We're still getting cucumbers that we're splitting between 2 families. So just little things like that, like the planning, working with your soil, and what was that one? And then succession planting.
Yeah, and that's something that
we just lost his audio.
Oh, we lost audio. There you go.
Can you hear me?
It just now picked back up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what we have a problem on. We don't do a lot of succession planting, and a lot of even gardeners. We got most of our more viewers are into gardening and whatnot, and they probably have the same experiences. We never know when we're supposed to succession plant. We, like you said, we just plant and then just harvest throughout the whole year, and then in August, and then you're like, that's when the hottest, especially for us in Texas.
I think that's the most common situation, actually, of people.
And I love the way on your Instagram how you have your lettuce beds, and hopefully now that we got our greenhouse up and running, that I could come out and visit one time and see how you actually plan out your lettuces.
Well, Jill and Nate keep inviting us.
Yeah. Get out there when it's we got one question for you already. It is, hey Sean, and this is from Happy Camper. Hey Sean, what type of greenhouse would you recommend for a beginner?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. It really depends what you're trying to produce and like what your budget is. And so on like the low end of like what do you call covered growing under something, you have like a low tunnel. So that's just like a piece of PVC or conduit you could bend and put plastic or even like cotton or polyester cloth over it. And you're kind of taking it on and off on those cold nights. And then it goes up to the greenhouse side of things. And we actually have a kit that we're calling the Homestead Tunnel that we're going to start shipping this spring. Okay. And so we'll ship that. We deliver it for free in Arkansas, and then we're going to ship nationwide. And so what I kind of found was, it is worth investing in the space. And I think if you ask Jill, she would testify to this because she got to grow in a high tunnel this past season of like, it's probably 4 times the yield in a tunnel of what you're getting out in a garden, so growing in that tunnel space, you can grow in a lot smaller garden and still produce just as much food. So, the varieties you may have to select would be different. The way that I designed our tunnels is that I really like to be strong and flexible, so that the tunnels themselves are lightweight, but they have a lot of cross connection that provides a lot of rigidity to our tunnels. And then we use trusses in all of our tunnels. So there's just like a house has a truss that provides additional strength. That truss also helps provide an area for you to trellis. So if you've ever seen like Josh Satton's like Trellis to Make You Jealous, where he does the T-post and the electrical conduit, we can basically just rest that conduit on top of the trusses in the greenhouse. And then we never have to pound the T-post. So it is worth like investing in a tunnel that's going to have a lot of multi-use. And I like having that structure, the trusses in there, because then you can trellis and then you save money on T-post and labor, and you just use the greenhouse itself as your trellis.
Yeah. We just learned a bit more about the trusses because we had a trellis system just installed. We just we're not in production of it just yet because we're still like having to wait on a dig test. So,
we're getting ours inspected by NRCS.
NRCS. Yeah, that's how you say that.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, before we go to the next question, do you have a lot of experience with that government agency?
Yeah, we do. So I've been through I've walked the farm that I managed through that program, and we got approved for a tunnel. And then I'm also an approved vendor for that program.
Nice.
So our tunnels can be cost shared through the EQIP program, which is EQIP, if someone Googles it, and Environmental Qualities Incentives Program. And two, if someone's thinking about applying for that program, it is competitive to your area, but the more things you can apply for, the better. And you can get things like ponds, fences, cross fences, waters, all kinds of different things. They even cover like cover cropping and all that stuff. So it's definitely a good program.
Yeah, it's something that we've learned a lot. And with me being a minority, and even females are considered
as a
minority.
veteran, it put him first of the line.
And disabled, first-time gardener, that put us above line.
A first-time landowner to this degree.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we got another question from Happy Camper. Do you recommend me? What do you recommend to me? I have issues growing bell peppers. I might have to elaborate a little bit on.
Please elaborate on
what are your issues of growing peppers?
Yeah, I would want to know more information. Yeah. And
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Another person said that, because we had the raised bed commentary that you had about the raised beds. And initially we were like raised bed people. We're in ground now, no till in ground. But we were initially raised bed. And a lot of people kind of like gravitate towards that have disabilities. And so there was a comment on here about, for people with limitations, raised beds are still a good thing. But if that's an issue, like for us, this is our first year of really successful growth, and it's been in ground.
And that was only because lumber prices were high, so I didn't
dumb luck.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and soil prices, and I mean everything was hard to get. But yeah, I mean raised beds definitely have their place for sure, and like we even do some stuff in pots that we like bring in and out of the tunnel. So everything has its place. It's just when people think that's maybe the only option to garden. Then they're probably going to expect to spend more money to get started than if they just went with like in-ground gardening. So that's usually why I recommend that. But I mean, like especially beautiful landscaping. I'm not against raised beds.
Now the value of spending the time to lay out the cardboard and do all the things and adding compost, like it has really shown out in the success that we've had in the past 2 seasons. Last summer and fall and this summer we've had.
Well, and two, we noticed we did overwintered flowers, and the flowers that were overwintered in the raised beds died because they don't have the insulating factor of the earth. They're not down in the earth itself. So the temperature of that raised bed is the same temperature of what's outside. And so they died through the winter.
We learned about lavender only being successful in ground.
I tried it in containers, raised beds, it just died. First year putting it in ground, it's thriving like crazy.
It is.
So Terry, she has a question. Did y'all know we can get government assistance for high tunnels on your property? Yes, we know that. And Sean, like you say, he's a person that can help you out. And what area do you service for high tunnels? Is it just Arkansas, or will you travel?
For right now, we have a baby coming in December, and so how much. Thank you.
We talked about this.
We saw on the Instagram when your wife was doing the
coop that I would like.
Oh, the coop, her cute pregnant belly.
Just so you'll know, he has like the lightest coop that I want.
So I am limited on I'm trying to fit in as many tunnels before the baby gets here, and then we'll probably start again in the spring. I am traveling to like Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee. But I want to move towards just the kits that I can ship to folks and just focusing on the smaller size kits.
So on that note, because you do, like a friend of ours, like shipping out your kits and setting those up, do you, for customers that buy your kit, are you familiar with like the different states, like NRCS stuff? Do you like look into that for your potential customers?
Yeah.
I'm ignorant on that, so I'm asking.
Yeah, different. Like if you have higher snow loads, they would require like thicker pipe and things like that. So that is a consideration. And yeah, I do. What I'd probably do is if someone is in an NRCS contract, I would just talk to their agent directly and say, "What are you looking for?" Just to make sure that everything's good. Sometimes the agents can be a little like more strict on what they want to see in a tunnel. Or it's just that they really don't know kind of what is maybe over engineering or under engineering. And so usually just a quick conversation can fix that.
Yeah, and the agents are not super
well, at least ours are. I can't speak on everyone else's. So
yeah.
Alicia Davis wants to know, so what alternative to raised beds and not traditional gardens to where it's too much work and time?
So what is the alternative to raised beds that's not a traditional? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in ground to me is the way to go. And in a lot of ways too, it kind of is like a change in how you think about it, right? The permanent, what like market gardeners call a permanent raised bed, it's not that they're raising the bed, it's that they're only walking in the walk path. And when you do that, you create like a depression in the walk path, and then you've raised the beds. And then also, like, one of the ways I kind of shifted my thinking about it is thinking about blocks. So the farm that I was managing, I would plant like a large block of carrots or something. So we would either do raised beds, but it's still like just a 100-foot by 100-foot block. Or we'd plant just on 18-inch rows straight across that block. And so it's almost like just a 100-foot by 100-foot raised bed, because I would have drainage moving away from that 100-foot block on all sides. And so that was helpful for me to think of too. And what I found is like going towards that block system, like in our backyard, we have 3 14 by 18-foot little blocks, and that's our crop rotation. So we can have a high tunnel, an outdoor garden, and then a couple years ago we had like chickens, and we just like moved those 3 things in those little blocks. But whenever you have raised beds and you have edges, there's a lot more to maintain. And so I've seen that with, people that have a lot of raised beds, is like the weed eating is like takes so much time, and then the grass encroaches up the inside the raised bed. Whereas if you just plant on a big block, you only have like one like area to kind of patrol and keep the grass out of. And so I like thinking about it more as like my garden is a block, just one large raised bed.
All right. We got Sabrina. She has a question for you. What type of coverings do you recommend for low tunnels?
Yeah. So plastic can work, but plastic can get super hot on a sunny day. And then not all plastic is the same. So like, the Visqueen stuff from Lowe's, their painter's cloth, it's not UV treated, so it'll just deteriorate really quickly. And then there's different weights of polyester, like non-woven type fabrics that they call like Agribond or row cover.
Yeah.
Those are also great. And then there's like lightweight to heavyweight, and the heavyweight you probably have to take on and off because it's so thick. And then the lightweight just tears all the time. And so I tried to just move away from using row cover, and just whatever needed protection was in a tunnel, and whatever didn't could just be out in the field. But then there's also like cotton. I think Grow Organic out in California has like some cotton options. Or even too, like you can just go get, if you just need some light frost protection, going to Goodwill and just getting sheets.
That's it. That is
and then you're, yeah.
So what we plan on doing is just allow, especially in our high tunnels, is, even though it's not recommended by the NRCS, but allowing our chickens and ducks and stuff to go, our chickens to go up in there. And we're also going to have possibly our rabbits in there. Yeah. and just have them just till up the land, get it all nice and ready, and let it age. Hopefully by April time frame, we'll be ready to plant in there, add more compost in there, and just let it go.
Yeah, and they're going to eat all the grasses that are in there and all the weeds, and then you'll have a weed-free tunnel from then on out.
Oh yeah.
So we're not even, we have it like it's all grass in there right now. Like this is the perfect time to talk to you about this stuff before we start chewing on this.
So we got Webfoot Farm. He has a question about bees. Living on 2 acres. Since you were in your early part of your career in education was in beekeeping, what would your what is the appropriate number of hives be without them competing with each other and for their resources?
Yeah. Okay. It's quite a lot. So bees forage up to 3 miles from their location. So first off, like, you can probably have dozens, and that's okay, depending on what's around you. But we were in downtown Houston, Texas, and I had 30 beehives on top of my roof. And so we
loved you.
Well, and we were right next to a school too. So the high school kids would like walk over and they're like, are those bees up there? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'd like throw down some honeycomb or something. It was cool. And we were like those people in the neighborhood. But yeah, like it was amazing what they were able to forage. And then I kind of started the beekeeping stuff doing like removals. So like in Houston, any home before the 70s like has no insulation in the walls. And so there was probably like 1 or 2 wild bee colonies living in people's houses or sheds on like every city block. It was pretty amazing. Like, you know, collecting these bees, how prolific they were just living amongst the city. So there can be a lot of bees in one area. What we have noticed, like as beekeepers, is since the 1940s, the honey production per hive has just steadily dropped. And it's just from loss of habitat. So while bees aren't native to North America, they were, you know, brought in from Europe. A lot of the things that they forage have all edge type plants that grow like on the edges of forests, meadows, native prairie, and we've lost so much of that habitat to either monoculture or even just cutting hay. Like we had a neighbor out at the farm that I had some bees at, and he had probably like 5 acres of goldenrod, which this time of year is like such an essential crop for them to get a lot of nectar through the winter. And he just didn't like the way he looked. So he went out and brush hogged it all. And it's just like, oh no. So while bees can forage,
properties in that too.
Yeah. It's like really like finding kind of like transitional land or marginal land is actually really good for bees. Because you get more of like the brushy kind of stuff that produces a lot of nectar. But then, you know, housing development could go in and they clear all that out, and then you've lost that forage. And so it really depends what your neighbors are doing.
Last summer I took a class with Dr. Leo for natural beekeeping. Mm-hmm. And I haven't like dabbled just yet, but I'm trying to
catch our first swarm next spring.
This upcoming spring, I'll be trying. I have everything I need to catch my first swarm, but we have to build our hive.
That's all.
That's awesome.
That's all.
That was going to be me. And so I was, maybe I have a misconception because I was very spoiled with being at Dr. Leo's and going into his apiary. I didn't have to wear any protection.
Yeah.
And, you know, the bees were around me because they don't agitate them. They don't bother them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know it's controversial with me sometimes, but
I want to read that.
I know I want to start off as natural as possible. So the next one, Terry asks, is red the color
if cover
that's best to use? What?
I'm not sure what that means. What? Do you mean clover? Is red?
Okay, we'll circle back. Terry, let us know. Specify that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Lady Hammer put, I made my first raised bed from 3 pallet boards. I still have them and they are still nice looking, but I moved to raised bed in the ground also now with the wall space. So yeah, we have done that as well.
Yeah, that's what it's turning out to be, because I know with us, part of our first very successful year in our no-till in ground is like we're adding. We have rabbits. We're adding rabbits. We have vermicompost. Worm collecting. We're adding natural stuff in compost to our beds, and we've gotten away from store-bought fertilizers. So, like, what are some of your thoughts about some of that stuff with soil and feeding it for a productive
organic fertilizer?
Yeah. So I mean, soil health is like the number one. Just like cattle farmers will say, "I don't raise cattle, I raise grass." And
Yeah.
So right, if you grow great grass, you have in turn great cattle. And for vegetable producers, it's like I don't feed the plants, I feed the soil, and in turn you have really healthy plants. Especially in organic farming. Hidden Oaks had a great question kind of about that, about the managing the soil like in the tunnel.
It wasn't
and so one of the things that's like I always recommend is having a soil test, and I actually do like 2 a season. So I'll do one in the spring, and that tells me like what I have going into the growing season, and then one of the fall kind of telling me what I've used up, and that's
recommendation for what you use to test.
So I can go to our local extension office, and they'll do the test for free, but I pay extra for two things. I get the nitrogen. Because what they do is, like, at least in Arkansas, is they assume you basically have no nitrogen in your soil. You're growing conventional corn, and the only way to put nitrogen in there is to put ammonia. And so I do that specific test because a lot of organic farmers that are doing really good cover cropping and crop rotation may not even need to add any nitrogen to the soil going into the growing season because they're growing their fertility. And so that's important to check. And the other thing is soil carbon. And that's organic matter. And then that's just a good way to check, like, am I net contributing to the amount of organic matter in the soil? And you can kind of watch that over time too. At the farm I was managing, I would actually take a sample and we put it in a clear jar, and we could watch that sample each year get darker, which is pretty cool to see, kind of track your progress. Yeah. So soil tests are super important. And then for in a high tunnel, everything kind of changes a little bit for the soil because you basically created an irrigated desert, right? All of a sudden that area gets no rainfall at all. And so one of the mistakes that I've seen some people make going to a high tunnel is the first couple seasons can be great. And then all of a sudden the plants start looking worse year after year. And it's usually because of a buildup of salts. So like calcium and
fertilizer.
Usually from compost. Compost is really high in salt.
Oh, okay.
We'll keep adding compost into a high tunnel every year, and if you don't have the natural rainfall to like flush out the excess salts from the compost, then it'll build up, and then it'll prevent the uptake of other nutrients. And so, yeah, that I think catches some people like after year 3, 4, 5.
That.
But with the soil testing and the watering of your good irrigation system, right?
Yeah. So like, if you're using drip irrigation, it still doesn't have the chance to flush. So like in the winter, we'd shift over to overhead irrigation to try and flush out some of those salts. And then usually the plastic on the tunnel wears out after 4 or 5 years anyway. So like when you're changing it out, you could just take it off before like several big rainfalls and like let it get a natural rainfall and then put the new plastic back on it. So you can do that in the summertime.
But I mean, if we already buy it, we have it set aside. Let's take it off right before the rainfall.
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to have to ask Alexa to put a timer on.
Remind me in 5 years too.
Yeah. You would be surprised what I ask her to remind me of.
Yeah. So Happy Camper asked, what covering would I use to help with the heat, but still let the sun and rain come through?
Yeah. So I have seen folks do like a shade tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
So while a high tunnel has the plastic and then you can put shade cloth on top of it, usually in the South, we're using like a 50% shade cloth because obviously we're in the South. You got to cut that sun. But I have seen some people use like basically a shade structure. They'll put up a few hoops and then just pull that shade cloth with no plastic underneath it over the plants. I've even thought about doing that for dahlias. Dahlias can have a hard time in the South, cut flower. and I've wondered about doing that. But yeah, I think that would be the only thing I could think of.
Okay. Yeah, we had that extreme heat, and so we use a 60% shade cloth, and it still allows some sunlight, not indirect, that harsh UV rays, and still allows rain to penetrate and everything.
We had a successful year, and we attribute it to the 60% shade cloth, and then obviously the worm casting and the rabbit.
Yeah, don't go cheap shade cloths or any frost protection blanket. Try to get the best that you can, because it will last. It will last
and we
long.
store it, properly. Bring it back.
And I have noticed that too. I've seen like cheap options on Amazon, and they just deteriorate. They're not UV treated like they say they are.
Yeah. Terry asks, "Is a red high tunnel cover best to use?" Okay.
I've
never heard of that.
I've never heard of that either, actually.
I've never heard of that, and that's interesting to know. Oh, and Emma with Sunny's Place wants to know, what kind of hive are you looking to use when you catch your? That might be a question to me.
Yeah.
And I actually bought one from Dr. Leo. So I would have to. I also have the Populus or whatever it's called.
I don't know.
To like attract them.
The propolis.
Propolis, yes. I was like, it's not propolis. Yes, I have propolis like in a little vial that I'll be able to.
So explain to people that don't know about bees. What is the propolis?
Yeah, it's stuff that they. Yeah, I'll let him, because he's got the degree in this terminology, because I'll sound like an idiot.
Like, so when you're attracting a swarm, propolis helps, and propolis is basically plant resins that the bees collect to like glue and seal the hive. And so it has like all the bee smells that are like trapped in that resin. And so it makes them think that that's a good place to move into, because obviously bees have lived there before if there's propolis. And you can also use things like they have like hormones basically that smell like the queen, that'll attract a swarm, as well as lemongrass essential oil. Has a really similar smell to that. That'll also help attract a swarm.
Okay.
Yeah, I was glancing back there because I know I have my trap back here somewhere, or like my little bag that has like all these little vials for the product. And lemongrass. Yeah.
So Lady Hammer wants to know, or put a comment: if you plant small fruit trees, you can keep them small for a bit of shade and still plant annual. Oh, okay. So this is about the shade cloth and whatnot. And then Terry that said that's what she meant with the shade cloth and everything. Trying to get to all y'all comments and everything, and still get the shot. If we miss y'all, I see, but we're
this is Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
So we're getting all the comments on both formats.
Yeah. Just make sure you type in them all caps. It helps us see them a lot better.
That's how we're seeing them.
What advice could you get for somebody that wants to grow year round, especially people that are living in apartments that aren't able to grow in a homestead environment or urban backyard garden?
Because our conversation about that was about herbs. As foodies, that's really where we started.
Yeah, we were growing the herbs in containers all throughout the place. For me, it seemed like herbs was a easy plant to grow for a first time gardener.
Herbs are really good. A good place to start, and kind of gets you in the habit of going outside to get food for the kitchen, right? And so we actually built, like when we first moved into our house here 6 years ago, we just have a galvanized tub and then a pot, like an old clay pot, and then another galvanized tub, and then a clay pot, and then a galvanized tub. And that's had the same herbs in it for 6 years. And like it has everything we've needed to harvest for dinners and stuff. And so those are great for patios. And then you can, bring them in. If you had like just a crazy winter storm, you could bring them in and put a little light on them or something. But things like lettuce, microgreens are also good options if you have the means or the space to have a grow light. We I don't have room for a grow rack in our house. And so in our, we do have a sunroom that gets sun, but not like sun all day. And so I talked my wife into / just did it anyways. I made this like bench and then put the grow lights underneath it. And now it's a seat. So it's a bench that has grow lights underneath it. I can slide the trays. So it created more seating in a small room, and it still can grow plants underneath it.
You don't know it, but the room that we're in, that we're facing, has 3 racks. We turned off all the lights before this live, but it has our fall garden starts.
Nice.
Our office that we also have incubators. So this is literally our office grow room where we grow chicks and plants.
Yeah,
I love that.
It gets kind of weird when we hatching chicks. It gets kind of warm up in here, so because we got a mini brooder area, and so Terry was asking something about sun's ultraviolet reflections on red color cloth allows better growth than white color cloth. Amazon sells I've never heard of that.
I know lights that certain light rays will, or at least what I heard, because some of the lights I have when I start here in Texas, when I start on my grow racks a little bit earlier and they get to a certain point, I put them under these other lights that do have some red rays to help them on the further. So I don't know if it's playing into that. What are your thoughts?
I haven't heard of like the red, like a red covering on a tunnel, because plants use red and blue light. They reflect green light. That's why they're green. And so if you put red, you'd be blocking out blue light from getting through, which the plants need. So I'm not really sure. What it might be is red mulch. So like in plasticulture, where they basically lay down a plastic mulch and plant into that mulch, there have been a lot of trials of using a red mulch. And for whatever reason, it reflects more red light back up to the undersides of the leaves and has an increase in production and things like that. So that might be it. But if it's a red tunnel, I've never seen such a thing. That'd be interesting to know about.
Just a sales marketing thing that Amazon might be pushing. So I've seen a lot of like little things like that, but
now a lot of homesteaders, and probably even especially since the pandemic kind of happened, we saw a break in we saw that how broken our food system is, how it came to light. What are some things that you would like to see or help improve with the broken food system?
And changing our local food system, because I know for us in our area, I just want to add this before you answer. We are part of a community, like we're bartering with each other. It's a fantastic Facebook group community where like we're getting cows from somebody, other people are getting chickens from us.
That's awesome.
But that's something that has to be created, and I haven't seen what we have in our community happen in other ones. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, so I'm kind of like newer into the homesteading thing, like homesteading community, coming from like the vegetable production side. And I think honestly, I kind of had a bit of a prejudice to it, because it seemed like a lot of the focus is like, how do I feed my family? How do I feed my family? And it's like, I want to prep and I want to store and I want to have stuff for us. And for me, and as like, and a farmer, I'm like, well, how do I like Faulkner County that I live in has 65,000 people. Like if something really bad happens, how do I make sure that these other 65,000 people are taken care of? And so that's where the food system conversation, and it's probably a both and sort of situation. You obviously need to take care of your family, but also need to be thinking outwardly too. And so I looked up like the etymology, or like the history of like where that word homestead comes from. And it's Northern Europe. Like a lot of different countries have a similar word for it. And it means like village and the land surrounding it. And so even like in like the Homestead Act and like in the US, to get people to move on to acreage and stuff, was still like the idea of forming communities. It wasn't just one family that then you put up a fence around it and you just provide for yourself. It was like, this is how we start a village. And so that village approach is, I think, what's really going to be important to change the food system, is that we like value each other and the work that each other does. And so while there might be a cheaper option to go to Walmart or to go to Amazon, valuing the craftsmanship that our community displays and willing to pay more to support your friends is going to be the only way that we really form that village. And so I think that's a really important factor, and one that, as we work towards, like, our ultimate goal is to have a farm, organic vegetable farm. And the goal I've set for myself is to feed 1,000 households in Central Arkansas. And so to get to that goal, it's going to be ambitious, and it's going to take a lot of social capital of like people believing in what we're doing and supporting us, and, you know, being willing to pay a livable wage for me and my employees, versus just going to the cheaper option. Because like we saw in COVID, that cheaper option just disappeared like that. And it was the small farms that had so much demand because all of a sudden people couldn't get stuff. And like that can happen again. And so creating that food system local is going to be so important.
Yeah. And that's something that I like about this group, because now, even though we are on 6.5 acres, we can't grow cow or raise cows, I should say.
Well, I mean, we could.
No, but it's nice to know that we can barter, you know, with we're about to have sheep and probably some other options where we can do some
we're about
bartering.
to get into sheep.
With
us, but we're you probably may, because I feel like what we have found has been like a magic little group, and for anybody that's watching here that has the wherewithal to want to do something like this, the people that are running this group are wanting to start like sister group, like or mentor people that want to do what we have going on here.
Yeah,
we have almost 3,000 people in Northeast Texas, a part of this group. And what we're doing, like, we're showing up at somebody's homestead. Every month there's a homestead selected, and like 50 plus people are showing up to do work that would take that family a year to do on their own in one day.
Whoa. Yeah, that's awesome.
Participating in
this. That's so cool.
Yeah, last month we did over
200 man-hours.
600 linear feet of fencing, 4 water catchment systems, underground trenching for their system, extended out their coop, and did their decking, stained, finished and restained their decking all in one day. So it was,
and
that's awesome.
For next September, so like he and I are like got a little time between now and next fall to like team material and all this other stuff.
Woo-hoo.
I have
awesome
happening in other places. We actually did a video on this couple and like what's happening in our community, because we really see the need for this to happen in other communities. Because we, like you said, homesteading, it's supposed to be a village, and there's been a big gap on that, on what that means. Like, a lot of people have become very me focused and me. But we do need to look out for our neighbors, especially now that we live out in the country. Like, I'm looking out for my neighbors, and they're actually looking out for us too here. For sure.
Input, I've heard a few people now that bees aren't native to America. True, if you're thinking only U.S., but the Mayas and Aztecs kept bees since the Europeans came to the Americas.
Yep, that is very true.
Well, so there's a different species. So North America has 3,000 species of bees, and none of them are honeybees. Most of them are solitary bees, and then some species of bumblebees. There are what they call social bees that form a hive in South America, but they're stingless bees. They're really small. They form these tiny little dense colonies, and they keep them in like clay pots. And so I don't even know if they probably couldn't handle the winters in North America. But yeah, that was amazing to a lot of folks that that honeybees aren't native to North America.
Because our friend Chip at Hidden Oaks Homestead
said, miss me with
the sheep. Whatever. Lamb is delicious. I want sheep for lamb meat.
Yeah. Terry put, if I can't get eggs or milk, I will have to travel an hour looking for some. Whew, man.
Yeah, I like what y'all said though about if your property is not set up for a cow, you don't need to get a cow, right? You can find other things that you thrive at and trade with folks. I do see that happen a lot where people can put too many animals or too many systems, and then what usually happens is like if you half-ass a lot of things instead of whole-ass one or two things.
Yeah, like you're real good at least like two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you cannot do everything.
You can't do it all. Yeah.
You have to really assess with what you're working with, what you can do within that space. I feel like a lot of people in the homesteading and us included, we're empty nesters. Okay. Our kids we don't have children with us now. Like we're aging in place, and we have to be very mindful because we like to grow things and explore, but it's too much for us, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, you need to look at the space that you have, what you can do within your space, and actually talk to your neighbors and see what they're not doing. And I feel like there is kind of a lack in communicating and saying hi.
Since you're doing a lot of organic stuff, do y'all have any animals besides chicken on y'all property?
No, and we're on 1/3 of an acre in the city.
Oh wow!
Right, yeah, we don't really have much space, and so I'm kind of living vicariously through the ravens and like.
A lot of information, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been to there before they moved there. We've been there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any experience with rotational grazing? Yeah.
So the ranch that I came from, before I started Mindful Farmer, we have 1,000 acres, or we had 1,000 acres.
Oh wow!
And so there were 200 head of cattle. I think they did 50,000 pastured poultry. There's 200 to 400 sheep, and everything is grass fed, grass finished on the sheep, and then the pigs are probably somewhere in the thousands. And it was all rotational. So that wasn't my enterprise. I was just vegetables, but I got to work with them, help move sheep, help move pig. And for some reason I became the processor too. If there was a pig that, couldn't go to slaughter, then they'd be like, "Hey Sean, you want to come process this pig?" And I process the pig, and then we'd kind of divvy up the meat and stuff like that from all the ranch staff.
So you went and did the processing. I want to go back and brag a little bit on our little homesteading community that we have, because we're actually having classes almost every week. There's like a rabbit butchering class we just took. All of them are like $25. We took there's the same weekend that we took that, there was a lamb one for people to do this themselves, to learn how to process their meats.
Yeah.
Which
and lamb is easy compared to like a pig.
I've heard.
That's our next animal after sheep.
Sheep.
Yeah. We've always done or put our mindset before we got into the homesteading lifestyle is to make sure we have an infrastructure, make sure that we understand how to raise, find a mentor of whatever that particular animal.
Yeah, that's great.
Having it, so that way, if we have any questions, if something comes around, then we can ask that mentor. A lot of people just want to just. And speaking of that, we got Hidden Oaks Homestead.
We live vicariously through our friends because they do some wild stuff.
I'm still trying to convince his wife Nicole to get him allow him to get a camel so I could come and visit more.
Vicarious. But the big message that we try to tell people, and I think it's because we did ourselves, because again, we're empty nesters. We don't have child labor to help. So for us, like even before we got chickens, we learned how to butcher chickens.
Yeah.
Before I get lambs, I'm going to learn how to process them before I even get them. I think it's very important to know these skills before you bring an animal, that responsibility, onto your property. Like, know what to do with them.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's super important. And same thing for knowing how to care for them too. Like if they're injured or things like that, like having some of those basic first aid skills too is important, right? Before you get something and then you're kind of a reaction to like, oh man, this pig is doing this weird thing. I have no idea what it is. And
No.
She won't let me get one.
No, because I'm here taking care of all the animals while he's at work. No.
So for someone that is trying to get into a no-till garden, especially for a first-time gardener, can you explain what would be your process and your steps into doing that, from starting to getting that soil nice and luscious for them to continue to grow in?
Yeah. So I usually recommend to people, if you're thinking about growing a spring or summer garden, you need to start the fall before. And so you can do a number of different options. I think the main thing people are going to contend with is killing the grass. And so either they could cut the sod out, they could put a plastic tarp on it to solarize it, or like a blackout and kill the grass and the perennial weeds. They could also do cardboard and do like kind of a sheet mulch approach where you do cardboard and then layers of organic matter. That will also like help kill those weeds and feed the soil. And so that's usually the approach. Or you can put animals too, like what you guys are doing in the high tunnel. I did that with one of our garden spaces. Is I just blocked the chickens in there all winter. I think I put a foot like deep of leaves that were bagged from like around the neighborhood. And that's another thing. It's like in the fall when all the leaves start dropping and people start bagging them up, I collect those like gold.
Those bags.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we're those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gold.
Our gardeners during the fall, I'm like, I'll grab my truck and just load them up.
Our neighbors had bags out. We're like, we got that. We got that for you. Yep.
So that's a good approach.
Yeah. So we got Weesup Sheep Creek Farm. They put, hey y'all, Mama V here. Good rules of both thumbs. Do what you can. Let me read over here. Do what you got and give yourself permission to do things wrong is how we learn. Yes, we try to learn the least expensive way we can.
No, and honestly, what I tell everybody, at least for us in our situation, we're getting old. So for us, we do everything we do, like informative and trying to like do the homework that we do, because we're too old for that learning curve. So we're trying to make educated mistakes where we're at.
Yeah.
And then even with our educated mistakes, we've learned some more on our own. So, I mean, you're always going to come across, and it always is that you're not in the same area of the advice that you're getting from some other person. You have different soil, you have different environments, you have different predators, you have different insect issues. So, I mean, and something that we didn't touch on with soil is we have learned how much stronger our plants are repelling pests because of how our soil is.
Yeah, building up that soil. We haven't, besides locusts and grasshopper, which there's no way you can really get rid of those besides putting insect fabric over those. But
this is the first year we haven't used any kind of like neem oil or BT.
Yeah.
Because of our soil. Yeah.
And that was our organic alternatives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in organic agriculture, there's this principle called integrated pest management, and it's basically a sequencing of actions you do. Like you're first monitoring for pests, then you do some cultural practices, which would be like growing better varieties, cleaning up at the end of the season, intercropping, trap cropping.
I was going to say I learned trap cropping this year.
Yeah. And And then you'd move into like physical type things like the barriers or like actually physically removing the insects. And then the last thing you do is spray. And so if you can, you're trying to basically go throughout the season without ever having to come to that. And yeah, healthy soils is the best way to do that because it results in healthy plants. And it might've been Elliot Coleman in the New Organic Gardener. He talks about how the just like the lion on the savannah, like goes after the weakest and the slowest gazelle.
Yeah.
It makes the herd stronger. It feeds the lion. That's kind of how plants operate the same too, is like the pests and disease are always going to attack the weakest plants. And so what you'd mentioned, Tori, was the trap cropping is like you can save the weakest plant, let some more pests and stuff get on it, and then take that out of the garden and burn it. And then you've trapped all those pests and you've removed the problem plant from the garden.
It was my first year learning that, prior in the past, like in our remedial stages and me loving calendulas, this year I learned how much of a great trap plant that was for a lot of pests in our garden. And that's where I always found like the first signs of any infestation was with my calendula here.
Yeah. And you mentioned a good thing about what plant variety to grow, because that's also a very important part. I know a lot of people want to grow all these heirloom varieties, but those are kind of more susceptible, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, but more susceptible getting bugs and some damage. And some people are kind of hesitant about hybrids, in which they're okay. They're I wouldn't say bred, but they're made to withstand certain elements that help grow. And like we went to visit one of our friends, we didn't know there was a particular high tunnel variety of tomatoes and cucumbers. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you don't have to pollinate. They pollinate themselves. And I was like, wow.
Natural
So I was like, wow.
Yeah, and those, like, hybrid doesn't have to be a dirty word either. And I,
a dirty word, and it's not.
Yeah. I mean, and even too, like a lot of the seeds, with the exception of like a seedless watermelon, that doesn't produce viable seeds. But a lot of hybrids, a lot of hybrids, they'll still, you could still save the seed. You just won't get offspring that are true to their parents.
Correct.
Which is even the case of some open pollinated varieties as well. But for like a market gardener, like without some of those hybrids, like I don't think a lot of farmers could even make a living, because they need that reliability of product that people are used to. The variety that Jill and Nathan grew of cucumbers this year is called, I think it's called Katrina.
Katrina.
I think so. Johnny Seeds sells them. I can't remember who the breeder is, but within 3 weeks of transplanting those, you have cucumbers.
Wow.
It's so fast. And every single flower pollinates itself, and every flower is female. So like that one vine goes up and it's just cucumber.
Were they pickling cucumbers?
We did pickle them. So if you pick them smaller than maybe 4 inches, you can pickle them really well. But they look just like the cucumbers you get at Walmart in those bags.
This past year, I was really, it was my first successful year with really good pickles, with the Persian pickles. Whatever they're called. I'm open to trying other things.
Yeah. Terry put squash bugs invaded her garden this year and powdered mildew. Now we grew a variety that the missus liked, is the
zucchini. He can never say
zucchino replicante.
What? You said that right.
Those are very resilient against a lot of pests. I mean, we saw squash bugs just get on them, and they still producing fruit like it was nothing else.
The awesome. Squash was like, what?
Yeah. She also put those little white butterflies are bad. They lay eggs on your plants. Luckily we got a high tunnel that has a insect barrier on there. We did it up to 6 foot.
Yeah, we did the 6 foot.
So that way
I know you can do it how you want.
So that way we can keep air going through there all through it, and not have to worry about bugs.
Well, the locust was our big concern, because it was something like I go out in my field and it's like bullets coming at me, but it's locusts. Like 6.5 acres. I'm like taking a hike out to feed chicken. Getting all these things. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to grow stuff out there.
So I think that was all the questions.
Yeah, I don't want to keep your time because I know we're right at our hour.
Yeah, I know you would want to talk about anything that you're currently working on and products.
We have some. Were we able to access that footage that he sent us? Because I'm like, the thing that we're going to be investing in is your broad fork.
Yes,
we are going to be doing that.
The finesse.
Yes, we plan on getting two because we want to have it one for our high tunnel and we want one out for it because these are totally separate and keeping things efficient like we talked about. I want one for out there and one for our high tunnel area. Show that clip of that broad fork because I think that not only is this a great exercise, I'm all about that. Pulling tractors.
So what made you come up with this idea?
Yeah. So my goal is the whole idea of being a mindful farmer is basically questioning everything, right? Like, is there a better way that we can do this? Is there a better solution? Am I thinking about this in the wrong way? Am I just doing what everyone's always done? And so I wanted to challenge some of the ideas and designs of the broad fork. The broad fork is a really important tool for a lot of organic farmers because it lifts and loosens the soil without the need of a tractor. Tilling can break apart soil structure, and a broad fork can actually improve soil structure. And at the farm,
tractors compact the soil.
Yeah, tractors can compact, and a tiller, it basically beats apart the soil structure that's developing it, and it looks like this nice fluffy powder that's really good to transplant into. But below where that tiller reaches, it actually compacts the soil. And so the broad fork can be a good option. At the farm that I was managing, a lot of our volunteers were international. They were young folks either before college, and a lot of them were women. A lot of people in sustainable agriculture are women, definitely leading the way. And it seemed like they struggled with a lot of the broad forks we had. They were either too heavy and required too much shoulder upper body strength, or even just having the body weight to jump on them. And so I wanted to design a broad fork where no one had to jump on it because that can also hurt your knees over time. And then that didn't require as much shoulder strength. So I developed this one, and it's all steel. It's made in right here in Central Arkansas. It's 10 pounds, so it's one of the lightest broad forks on the market. And with the steel teeth and a T handle, you're able to rock it back and forth and just kind of apply a light weight, and it goes down to the soil. So no one's jumping on it. It's easier to carry. And then also I designed it to where the teeth are on 6-inch centers. So once you have it broad forked, you can just drag it backwards and then you smooth out the bed. Yeah. And I think it's going to show in a second. It'll mark your rows on 6-inch centers, and then you can go back and transplant more efficiently. So it's also close enough. The teeth are close enough spaced where you can also use it to harvest potatoes and carrots. So I really want to try and design tools that do lots of different things to where you need fewer tools to begin with.
Now, speaking of designing tools, you also came up with this seed spreader. Blocker, whatever. Can you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Another thing that I want to get to because I did all of our planting and very small seeds. So soil blocks are a really great way to start plants without using a tray. So trays can they can warp in the sun, they crack, they break over time. They usually just sit in piles around our farm and garages, right? Mm-hmm. And so the soil blocks make a healthier transplant. The plant will send its roots in all directions throughout the block, so they use the soil more efficiently. They don't have transplant shock. They're generally a healthier plant. But what I noticed is, so doing this. With the soil blocks at the farm I was managing, we were starting 1,000 heads of lettuce a week. So it's a lot of that. Wow.
And so I came up with the soil block drop seeder to be able to seed in just one click. And so you just shake the seed falls in the hole, and when you click it together, the seed drops through, and all the plates are interchangeable with magnets. So you can do all different sizes, even down to like a Lysianthus or a celery seed, which is like super, super small. It's about 1 millimeter wide. And so you can just seed those really quickly.
That's why.
Yeah. And I'm actually coming out like before Christmas, we're coming out with a larger version for the standing 35, which is a bigger soil blocker. And then we're also coming out with one for the 10 by 20 trays. So then you can seed full-size trays with just one click. You can seed 128 cabbages at a time.
You're really doing what your brand name is. You really are mindful in what you're doing, because
Thank you.
we're at, just as beginners, some of the issues and the blocks and the because I do a lot of our starts, a lot of the things that you're developing is like little complaints that I have and tools that I've tried, and you really have been very mindful.
Well, one of the first things I did, like when I was like, I'm gonna do tools, is I got all the major tool providers and I got their catalogs, and I went through and I just tore out every sheet that I thought was a tool that a farmer didn't need to have. Like, it's something that they're selling, but not a lot of people are going to use it, or they'll use it for a few seasons. And I try to get down to just what are like the bare 20 tools that from a home gardener to a small scale farmer could use, and use in lots of different ways, and use ideally for a lifetime and pass down to their kids. And I think too, like that, I just did a tunnel install yesterday for a couple that's from England. And I was talking to them how, like, I just noticed, like with a lot of European gardeners, there's this like value in really putting a lot into the space, really putting a lot of like, like Charles Dowding, like his garden is just beautiful. He's put a lot of time into it. It's and his tools, right? He's like good sharpening the tools to good quality tools. And in America, like, because space is generally abundant and things can be manufactured really cheap, we tend to just like till a huge area.
In that.
Yeah, a little wasteful. Like that's kind of the American attitude in some ways. And I'll just go buy a cheap shovel from Lowe's, even though I have to rebuy it every single year because I break the same handle.
But if you garden long enough, you start to value actually quality tools. So we've graduated to a stage where, we're seeing the value in what you're doing.
Yeah, and because I that's kind of what I saw is like with the broad forks that I was using at the farm, we were breaking handles or they were too heavy. Same thing with like different cultivating tools. Like I'd have to take time because one of the volunteers got a splinter through their hand because the fiberglass broke on them and stuff. And so I was like, we're going to do this the right way if we're going to do it.
Well, somebody had to.
Yeah. So Hidden Oaks Homestead said, hopefully they can talk Sean into the Florida visit for their event.
Well, when is your wife due?
She's due. We'll probably sit down to Thanksgiving dinner, and she's going to go into labor. That's my bet.
Okay.
So I don't know if you could possibly make that one. I think she'll probably be.
Yeah, they have a really great event going on.
I'm sad I didn't get to go to the conference this year. We just had too much going on this fall, but I would love to do a Florida visit this spring. Escape the awful weather in Arkansas in February.
Well, they do in October a Gulf Coast homesteader event there, and they actually like Hog Hill Farms is going to be there. Arms Family Homestead is going to be there. We're not going to be there, but we should be there.
Yeah, we're going to be putting some chickens to freezer camp that day.
No. We have people signed up for a class. Teaching how to
But anything else you want to promote or highlight, or where can people find you at?
Mindful Farmer is the name of the company, and Mindful Farmer Arkansas is our handle on pretty much everything from Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. My email is Sean@mindfulfarmerarkansas. Our website, Mindful Farmer Arkansas.
Below in our video. So if anybody goes and looks in the description, I made sure to add your Instagram, which is the best way to directly reach you. Right? You said that, and and then on your website, looking at your tools that you have available, because I know like ergonomically for me, with some of my physical limitations, your tools are going to be perfect for me. So And then obviously YouTube, but we're on that format. Not everybody is into all the formats, but that's why we did this on YouTube and on Facebook.
Yeah. And I'm gonna try and get more stuff on YouTube as I can about the tools.
A lot of work.
It's so much work.
I tell everybody the work is already work.
Yeah.
Filming the work is
yes.
So
yeah. Well, that's how I felt with this whole, building a business. It's like, I'm an ecologist. What do I know about social media? And I have to wear so many hats. It's fun. Yeah. I love it. It's crazy.
I wasn't always a social media manager. I used to work in ophthalmology with eyeballs. So.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
This is your hat now.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this live. It's something new for us. It's trying to bring more educational to the channel.
Just content,
to help people out. I think this was very, very helpful and thoughtful, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. If so, make sure y'all hit that thumbs up, and
I hope you took away something of value in this. Yeah.
I did. I enjoyed it. I love talking to you guys.
Yeah. We sure appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sean, for taking a moment out of your time
of course,
sharing with our viewers of your knowledge.
Yeah. Because that's the most valuable thing.
And we also want to thank Emma, our moderator, for moderating and putting out plugs. Make sure.
Yeah, go check out Sunny's place. She is our friend, and she has been watching our back this entire life.
Yeah, her and her husband, they were trying to get some turkeys to freezer camp, and they made some good lessons. Some good practice makes experience. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Doesn't make perfect, because no one will ever be perfect. So
love that.
All right. Thanks again, Sean. Have a good evening, and everybody else. Thank y'all for. Terry used to work on the eyeball.
Okay, we need to talk, Terry.
But I sure appreciate it, Sean. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank y'all so much.
See you at the next Okie Homestead as well.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I want to have your wife on the live at some point. So
yeah.
Because she is entire different.
Oh yeah, that's another.
I'm fascinated with. You're awesome, Sean. Your wife's amazing.
Yeah, she's definitely the better half. That's for sure.
So just give her a heads up that we're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay. Good night, y'all.
Bye.